A few years back, if we were to talk about things that work really well in retail and how they could be implemented into Classic, you'd have called me crazy and said there's absolutely no way Blizzard would implement anything from retail into Classic. And you'd have probably been right. The thing is, fast forward to now, where they've added the retail auction house, the collection tab for mounts, pets, and even transmog. Needless to say, if there's good systems in retail now and they kind of fit within the Classic expansion we're going into, they'll at least consider it. And I would say there's a couple of things about Mist of Pandaria that I hear very, very often, and how a couple of systems could be taken out of retail, implemented into Classic, and overall it would just be a much, much better experience. So as I say, there's two big systems in particular that I think would solve some of the biggest issues with Mist of Pandaria, and while it may have not seemed to be problematic back in the day, we know they're things that concern people right now. Before we jump in though, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, consider hitting subscribe, especially if you're excited for Mr. Pandaria. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video as well, because hopefully you're going to like it. If you don't, then you can unlike it at the end. So first of all, let's start with reputation. You would have heard things like Mr. Pandaria is a world of daily craft. You can't re-roll because you'll have to do reputation grinds again. All my pre-raid bis is locked behind reputations. Well, look, some of those statements are actually correct. Not all of them, because reputation in a 5.4.8 state is nowhere near as important or impactful as you might think, but it could still be made better. In recent years in retail, one of the most popular and well-received systematic changes has definitely been the Warband system. Now, first of all, let's look at what it is and why it would be amazing in Mist of Pandaria Classic. Firstly, starting from when you first log into the game, the character selection screen is so much better than what we've got right now. And this is purely aesthetic, so really not a big deal that it would be in the game. A little bit like the auction house. The retail style auction house is just an improvement. It's aesthetically better and much easier to navigate. This is kind of the same thing. You can add favourites and see your favourites around a little campfire on screen. You can even unlock different scenes for it, so it's not just the standard campfire. You can make custom groups to put all your ranged DPS together, put all your healers together, or however you want them organised. As I say, this has no direct impact on gameplay, but just looks great. And in MoP Classic, we could even have our own custom screen made, where it's Veil of Eternal Blossoms, or Krasarang Wilds, or something like that. Now, this would just be a nice to have. The important part about Warbands is how they make ults incredibly friendly. Mr. Pandaria, as much as I absolutely love it, if you haven't guessed by now, is one of the most ult-unfriendly expansions that we've had, and that's purely because of the fact that you've got one long quest chain running all the way through the expansion, so you can get your legendary cloak. And some of that legendary cloak questline revolves around reputation with the Black Prince, and getting the Black Prince a different level of reputation each time the legendary questline progresses on. Now, when Blizzard set out to implement the Warband system, it was to make playing ults more friendly, and even to encourage you to play ults that you might not ordinarily play. Reputation shared across your Warband, as in all of your characters on the account, but region specific. So if all your characters on NA will share reputation, all your characters on EU will share reputation. You also have access to a Warband bank, where you can do a short questline to be able to actually summon this remotely as well, so you can easily access all the important things on your account from wherever you are. Really, you should just think about this as your own personal guild bank. Even certain currencies can be swapped among your characters. So in your currency tab, you'll be able to send currency from one character from that currency tab into the currency tab on one of your other characters. A really good example of this would be Timeless Coins. Now, Timeless Coins are going to be when Timeless Isle comes out, which, don't get me wrong, it's right at the end of the expansion, but obviously it wouldn't need to be limited to Timeless Coins. The only reason I'm using that one as an example is because that does actually work in retail today. So if you was farming loads of Timeless Coins on your main, but then you wanted to get items on your ult using them, you can then just send the Timeless Coins to your ult to then be able to get geared up pretty fast. So not only does it encourage you to play your ults, but it also doesn't punish you for going and farming out in the open world on your main. To be completely honest, the currency sharing and the fact that the reputations would be account-wide is enough on its own. But there is one more part of the Warband system that I absolutely love, and I'm under no illusion that Blizzard would ever implement it into Classic, because I think it would just be far too much work, but it would be epic if they did. And if you know about Warband systems, you probably know I'm going to talk about Warbound items. Now, what this is every boss has a chance of giving you as personal loot a Warbound item. It will drop from the boss's loot table, so for example, if you kill a boss that can drop a fist weapon, it could drop that exact fist weapon, but it will be Warbound, and it will be slightly lower item level. Now, these Warbound items can be stored in your Warband bank, and it's just a great way to be able to get some pretty big items for alts. And an example of how this actually encourages people to play their alts is if you was in Throne of Thunder and you got Rune of Reorigination, which is basically every Feral Druid's wet dream, if you got a Warbound version of this, you'd probably very quickly level a Feral Druid just to be able to play with this item. The same goes if you was to get a Warbound bow that was particularly strong. It might make you want to gear your hunter up because you've got a super sick weapon to start with instantly. Now again, this is a really tall ask to be wanting Warbound items put in because I'd imagine that's a lot of work, but it is actually a fantastic system. And if we can have the Warband system in as a whole, so that's including account-wide reputations, the Warband bank, and Warbound items, man, that would be crazy in MoP. And like I say, as it's renowned for being World of Dailycraft and one of the most alt-unfriendly expansions that's ever been made, it would be the perfect time to steal such a successful system from retail and bring it into Classic. But Blizzard, if you're watching, you'd need to think about this now because, yeah, you probably need to be working on it now because it sounds like quite a big job. Let's face it, this ain't Season of Discovery. You're not watching. So that would solve potentially multiple problems by having Warbands in. The next one will probably be nothing new to you because so many people have commented recently on a video where I was talking about the biggest changes I'd like to see, saying, what about flex raiding? Now, in Mist of Pandaria, flex raiding was genuinely one of the best received systems that they put in for the entire expansion. The unfortunate thing is it didn't come in until the end. Now, it was that successful and that well received that it's influenced how raiding even happens today in retail. But you might not remember exactly how it worked, because to you, as someone who maybe knows a bit about retail, you probably think about flex raiding as normal and heroic, and you can just go with anywhere between 10 and 30 people, and there's normally a sweet spot where you don't get extra mechanics, or the mechanics are not quite as punishing. You're going to get that one extra item that drops from the boss. You'll see a lot of groups going with like 14 people, for example. Well, the thing is in Siege of Orgrimmar, which is the very final raid, was when they implemented flex raiding back originally, and it actually sat as its own difficulty. So flex raiding sat difficulty-wise between Raid Finder and normal raids. Now, what you're probably expecting me to say is, guys, what we need is flex raiding from the start for all tiers of content, which would be great, but that's a whole other difficulty of raids, a load more items that they've got to create, they're going to have to tune it all. It probably would be a lot of work. Instead, what I think they should do to really follow the retail style of raiding is have normal as flex. Just normal is flex. Heroic basically would then be retail's version of Mythic. So heroic, you can only do 10 or 25, and it's fixed to 10 or 25 people, whereas normal difficulty would be the flex difficulty. What this means is they don't need to add another whole tier of content, as in scaling items down to be flex difficulty and then implementing that whole flex system on its own separately from normal and heroic for every tier of content. We just turn normal into flex. I see absolutely no downside to that because guilds running normal every week and maybe scaling up to do some heroic would absolutely love this. And it feels really bad when, let's say you run a 10-man team and you've got 12 people that are signed up for a week and they've got to miss their lockout with you, like 2 of them have, when you could just go, yeah, we'll do a full normal and we'll take all 12. The thing that this would mean is normal and heroic would need separate lockouts. So you would be able to do normal/flex every week on your character, and then you can also do heroic. But heroic would just sit completely on its own. So you wouldn't be able to then change on a boss-by-boss basis between normal and heroic, which would be a bit of a downer because obviously some of the bosses you might want to skip early on to get to easier bosses. So an example of that would be Spirit King's heroic in Moghasham Vaults is particularly difficult, whereas Elegon is quite easy. So if you had normal and heroic split, because normal/flex is now its own difficulty, then you would have to make your way through heroic raids in order of boss kills. Now, whether there was a workaround with that where the loot from the bosses, you was only eligible to roll on it if like you haven't killed it on normal this week or something like that, so you could still switch between normal and heroic, but that all now just starts to sound a lot more convoluted. I would almost just have heroic difficulty as retail's mythic difficulty, because there's no skipping mythic bosses, you have to work your way through, and then having normal as flex. The positive would be that you can go in and get full normal geared and then start working on heroic progress. So even though you can't skip some of the harder bosses, you are actually going to get more loot overall if you're doing both difficulty sizes anyway. So I've got to be honest, I still don't really see a downside to it. I think it would actually make the raiding in Mr. Pandaria 10 times better. Being able to flex raid from the word go into Mogosh Vaults and get showered loads of normal gear, and then maybe splitting off into multiple 10-mans to do 10 heroic, or splitting off into 25 obviously and doing 25 heroic. It would just make raiding feel so much more fun for so many guilds, where it doesn't matter how many people you take. You can have a 29, 30 people roster and all raid together every week. You could have 15, 16 people on your roster and all raid together every week. Yes, it's only going to be normal that you get to raid with every week, but it does mean you ain't got to leave any of your casuals or socials out of raids. You can just take everyone and ultimately do what WoW's meant to be there for and enjoy yourselves. So yeah, this is a little bit of let's just hope Blizzard do actually put some effort into MoP and give us some of these things, but in my opinion, these two systems coming from retail and sitting in Mr. Pandaria would work perfectly. I genuinely think it would be amazing if they did do something like this. Or even, I'd take one out of the two. Preferably the raiding changes, actually. I'd prefer the raiding changes to Warbands, but I'd take Warbands. But as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Consider joining the channel as a member to show extra support. You just click that join button down there. And I'll see you on the next one.